Welcome to Get Your Mind Right. Today, we're diving into your questions and insights in our mailbag segment. Thanks to everyone who wrote in. Let's open up the mailbag.
Good morning and welcome to Get Your Mind Right Mailbag Edition. Today, we're going to unpack the kind of questions that sound simple until you try to answer them with the confidence in front of a merchant, a prospect, or even your own team. We're going to finish with a backstory about a guy who knew what he was doing and the handle still fell off. I'll explain. But first, let me give you a preview of what's in the bag today. First of all, Curtis Klausner from Virginia. He wants to know why he'd ever need to pay fees if he's already charging his customers. Dawson Dimmitt from Boonville, Indiana wants to turn past purchases into future profits using digital marketing and POS systems. And we're going to wrap up with Whitney Johnson from Evansville, Indiana. And she wants to know what skill every salesperson underestimates early in their career. Well, let's get to it. We're going to start off with a bang here with Curtis Klausner. Curtis says he already charges the customers, so why would he need to get more fees from the merchant to him? Well, Curtis, I feel this one on my bones because this is one of those, it sounds logical until you say it out loud objections. So let's flip the script here. If a merchant charges a delivery fee to their customers, should they refuse to pay the driver? If they charge for oil changes, then shouldn't they get their oil change for free? No, and the reason is because one fee does not replace another. Your fee isn't for the right to charge customers. Their fee is for the tools, the tech, the setup, the clients, the support, ongoing optimization that makes their whole credit card processing system work. Curtis, let me put this another way. You might say to them, you're already making money from your customers, so why would you pay for inventory, labor, or rent? See, it sounds kind of crazy, doesn't it? So let's break this down and talk about, when you hear this, how we handle this objection tactically. The first thing, as always, we want to acknowledge it. Mr. Merchant, that's a totally fair question. I hear that a lot. You might pivot to the labor analogy. Even if you pass that cost along to the customer, someone still has to run and pay for that engine. In that case, it's us. And the last thing is show the value to your merchant, what it is they're actually paying for. Mr. Merchant, what you're actually paying for here is control, transparency, and long-term stability. If you're just using a processor to pass fees, you're playing with fire. So Curtis, the next time someone throws this at you, smile, because if they're saying this, they're ready to buy. They just need a little help untangling their logic. Thanks for a really great question, Curtis. Now, our next one comes from Dawson Dimmitt from Boonville, Indiana. And Dawson knows what's one simple way to take purchase history from POS and turn it into repeat business with digital. Oh, it's a great question, Dawson, right in my wheelhouse. And this is what I call digital deja vu. Your customer bought it, but the system forgot it. So here's the play. What I want you to do here, Dawson, is use a 3-step trigger campaign. And the first one is to segment by purchase type. So I want to look at who bought what, not just when, because t-shirts, they don't equal tires. I want specificity of what people are actually paying for. And the next thing is to come up with a follow-up offer. This isn't a discount, it's an invitation. Hey, Mr. Customer, you bought X. People who also love X love Y. Would you like early access to this? Let me give you a hint on this, or an analogy here that you're probably already aware of. If you've ever ordered pizza online, pizza companies are masters at upselling you. Now, when I order pizza, I pretty much know what I want. I'm going to look at the specials. I'm going to see if that special looks good. I'm going to order it. And for me, it's going to be pizza and only pizza. Now, however, if it's my wife or my kids or their significant others around and they're looking over my shoulder, helping me order, well, guess what always goes with it? Wings, breadsticks, a lot of times a 2-liter, maybe a dessert. And you know what? Those pizza companies, they're great at making that offer. Would you also like this? And you know why they're doing that? Because it works. And at the end of the day, people buy these things because they want them. We're not just upselling them. We are improving that customer experience. Now, the last thing, Dawson, is the time to send this. So depending on the product, what it is you're selling them and what they bought before, there's going to be an interval. It may be 7 days. It may be 2 weeks. It may be a month. But you need to figure out what that interval looks like and then hit them when they're ready to engage. Here's an example. Someone buys a gym membership and 14 days later, I want to offer them a personal training session. Someone buys an expensive house plant from me. 30 days later, I'm going to offer them fertilizer or a repotting kit. Dawson, this isn't complicated, but it is personalized. And let's face it, most folks just aren't doing it. A bonus tip out here, use SMS instead of email if you want speed, if you want immediate attention, if you want immediate action. Dawson, your POS system, they know where these customers are. They know where they live. They know what they want. They know what they bought. They can anticipate what they're going to want. The POS knows where the gold is buried. Your job is to bring the shovel, and this form, bring them back like the VIP that they are. Dawson, thanks for a really great question. We're going to wrap up today with Whitney Johnson from Evansville, Indiana. And Whitney says, or her question is, what's one skill you think every salesperson underestimates early in their career? Ooh, that's a tough one, Whit. There's a lot I could list here, but if you're going to make me narrow it down to one, that's really going to be the linchpin for everything else. It's this. And this ability is the ability to shut up and listen. Because every salesperson wants to be smart. They want to be seen as valuable. And what they think is, if I talk enough, I'll sound smart. They're confusing volume of words with the value of what they're actually speaking. Now, veteran salespeople know if I listen long enough, they're going to tell me how to win the deal. This isn't about just being polite. It is strategic patience. Every time you ask a question and actually let the prospect answer, you're doing a number of things. You're building trust. You're gathering ammo in the form of ammunition. You're slowing down the pitch clock, and you're finding out where the real problems lie and where that merchant's real pain points are. And here's something else. When you listen well, your short answers hit harder because you become that person who speaks when it counts. Every word carries value. So for you folks out there just getting started in sales, or if you're mentoring someone who is, remember, don't just learn to talk. Learn to listen like it's your paycheck. Because you know what? It is. Great question, Whitney. Have you ever had a moment where you thought you had everything handled, only to realize you were ignoring the one thing that actually mattered? And sometimes it was of crucial importance. Well, this happens in sales and it happens in leadership. And yeah, as you know, it happens in life. And sometimes the part you overlook ends up being the piece holding the whole thing together. Well, let's go there. Let's talk about a hammer handle. Welcome to Backstory, where I take a step back before we move forward. Each week, I share moments that shape me, whether it's my time as a sales rep, my journey as a dad, experiences I had, stories I've learned, or the curiosity that's followed me since childhood. Because every lesson learned today, well, there's usually a story worth telling behind it. Let's get into it. Well, I didn't grow up on a farm exactly, not in the up at 4 a.m. to milk something kind of way. I am, however, a country kid. There is a difference. Now, my parents, on our farm, we had some animals, and we had a big garden, massive really, enough to feed half the county if we had to. But if you're from the country, you know there's a difference between having animals and working a farm. Now, the folks who grew up on actual farms with the actual farm animals and herds, they walk differently, they move differently, and they're calibrated to learn lessons and calluses that the unspoken contract between humans and livestock. Now, I'm making this difference here because that was my grandpa. Now, on my mom's side, Grandpa, he was a real farmer. He was the real deal, work till you bleed, no days off kind of guy. Even after a devastating stroke forced him into retirement, he was still engaged. He didn't have a lot of mobility on his left side or strength anymore, but he still had that presence on the farm. He was steady and watchful and quiet, kept his eyes and ears open. Well, one night, Grandma and Grandpa came by for a visit. We happened to be outside when they arrived, and Grandpa, who still loved animals, although he didn't have any anymore, asked me if I'd take him around to visit the livestock that we did have. This was a usual and customary move for him. We didn't have anything big on our farm. We had a couple of pigs, a cow, some chickens, and a few goats. But the piece de la resistance. We had one very complicated horse named Star. Now, before we go any further, Grandpa asked me a question that, at the time, it didn't fully register. He said, "John, does your dad still keep that hickory hammer handle in his truck?" And I said, "Yeah." He nodded. "Go get that for me." So I did. I didn't ask any questions. Dad kept that hammer handle in his truck for years. It had a name. It was called the Persuader. Now, thankfully, it was never pressed into service. So Grandpa took it. He slipped it into the big side leg pocket of his Big Mac overalls. Now, that was Grandpa's preferred attire. I have many Christmas photos of him in the overalls. And for those of you who are not initiated, that was a farmer brand from J.C. Penney back in the day. Now, Sears, they also had a brand that was very popular, but Grandpa wouldn't wear anything else. It was Big Mac or bust. Brand loyalty runs deep in the fields. Well, any rate, Grandpa and I walked around. First of all, he went to the first stop, which was the pigs, his favorite. And then we went out and he started rubbing on our cow. He talked to the animals and would softly mutter to them and even ask them questions. So meanwhile, I noticed something and my stomach started tightening. Star, our horse, slipped up behind us. Now, about Star, she was an absolutely magnificent animal. Jet black shimmering coat, a diamond white tuft between her eyes. She looked like a storybook horse. She was a beautiful and muscular athlete. Also very, very smart. All good, right? Wrong. Star was mean. And I mean mean in an unpredictable and premeditated way. She didn't bluff. She would bite. I'd seen it happen. Now, full disclosure here, I did not like this horse. Actually, I never even was able to relax when she was around. And now I'm watching it happen again, except this time she's going after Grandpa. There he is, slow moving, can barely get around, partially disabled, and I think totally unaware. Or so I thought. Now, keep in mind, all this transpired in the space of a second or two. Just as she was quickly lowering her head, mouth opening, lining up in front of his arm for a bite, with one quick motion, Grandpa whipped that hammer handle out of his pocket with one smooth, lightning fast motion. Crack! This was a clean roundhouse swipe. Everything he had right across the bridge of Star's nose. Paya! It sounded like a shot, kind of sound that instantly scrambles your senses. Star staggered. She shook her head. She took a couple of drunk-looking steps backwards, and then she bolted. Grandpa, he just kept rubbing on the cow like nothing happened. Didn't even mention it, didn't miss a beat. I'm here to tell you, I was shaken up. I didn't say a word. I was so upset. I didn't know how to feel. I was a kid, 8 or 9 years old maybe. I was old enough to understand what I saw, but really too young to fully process why it happened this way, and for that matter, what the ramifications would be. For a bit, I was certain that he had killed this horse. Star definitely kept her distance, but after a few minutes, it was apparent she was fine. Now, later that night, long after everyone had gone, I couldn't hold it in. This incident had ruined my total evening. So after the place cleared out, I went to Dad when he was alone, who, by the way, was a real farm kid. And with a shaky voice, I told my dad what I'd seen, every bit of it, every detail. He nodded. He asked me several questions, and he looked at me, slowed his cadence down, as calm as ever, and he said, "Are you okay now?" And I paused for a minute, and I said, No, not really. Dad, he just kind of nodded at me and took his time, and he said, "Well, you'll be okay. You'll be all right." He said, "I want to tell you something. Your grandpa, he knows what he's doing with animals. And that horse, she isn't injured. But your grandpa, he could have been injured. Well, I didn't really know what all that meant at the time, but the bottom line, if Dad was okay with it, then I was okay with it. That intense anxiety I had soon dissipated. It took me really a few years to really unpack and fully understand what had happened. See, what I was doing is I was looking at this situation like a suburban kid who had animals as pets. Grandpa, he was a farmer. It's what he did to feed his family. He didn't see a pet. He saw risk. He saw bad behavior that could not be allowed to continue. Grandpa wasn't mad, wasn't cruel, and even though I thought he was at the time, he wasn't excessive. He was corrective. Because in his world, when a 1,000-pound animal decides it's going to throw attitude and test a boundary and attempt to injure you, you end that behavior immediately. Because out there on the farm, if you don't establish control early, there may not be a second chance. Now, I've told this story a few times over the years, and sometimes I get a horrified reaction to it. The thing that's hard for some folks to process is my grandpa, he really loved animals. That was the moment I learned the difference between loving animals and managing them. And more than that, is a lesson in timing and composure. And frankly, doing what has to be done. Because sometimes leadership, well, it can look like a gentle hand and a soft voice. Sometimes it can look like that metaphorical hammer handle in your overalls. And that moment with Grandpa and Star really wasn't about livestock, it was about leadership. Because out there on the farm, he wasn't just reacting out of fear or emotion. He was managing risk, protecting the herd, and setting boundaries before danger could take root. It wasn't personal, it wasn't out of malice, it was necessary. And that's what leadership requires, great leadership, especially in business, because there are times that you have to move with calm authority and clear intention. Because sometimes hesitation, well, it can cause you loss. And when softness is masquerading as kindness, it can actually cost you control. Sometimes boundaries must be enforced immediately, even if it makes other people uncomfortable. When you're leading a team, you're managing a tough client, or navigating life with your kids, there are going to be those star of the horse moments. Situations that look beautiful on the outside, but can carry danger under the surface. You've got to be ready to act decisively, to correct behavior before it turns into a crisis, and to manage, not just nurture. Because sometimes leadership is a kind word and a listening ear. And sometimes, well, as my dad would say, it's a persuader. In this case, that leadership's a persuader in your overalls. Folks, our mailbag takeaways today. Passing a fee to customers doesn't replace your investment in tools, tech, and service. And secondly, Dawson brings us a notion that POS knows what people want. Use it to bring them back. And last, for our friend Whitney, listening isn't passive, it's your secret weapon. And our takeaway from the backstory, when the time comes, you have got to be the one holding the hammer. Hey, if you like this story about my maternal grandpa, there's one about my maternal grandma, of course, his wife. It dropped on August 29. It's episode Mailbag 41. I put it there in the box. You could click on it if you'd like to give it a listen. Hey, and if you enjoy this podcast, please share it with someone who needs it, and make sure that you like it and you smash that subscribe button. If you got questions or comments, I'd love to hear about them. Drop them in the box below. Until then, I'll see you back here on Wednesday. And until then, get your mind right.